From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. About 600 Central American migrants have been detained in Mexico's southern state of Chiapas. Immigration officials asked them to present their travel documents at the official port of entry. The group entered Mexico by crossing the Suchiate River at the border with Guatemala. Some 10,000 Central American migrants are expected to gather at Mexico's northern border. And the group already in the city of Tijuana is growing in size. A reported 3,500 migrants are currently staying at the border city, with the largest group arriving from Mexicali. Authorities say these numbers are starting to take a toll on shelters, which are nearing their limit.
The shelter is already full. I'm not sure what those in charge will do. No one else reads in here to sleep, and I hope they have a plan B. And the food, it's very little for the amount of people who are coming. I'm not really sure what they're going to do.
Well, we are not really suffering that much. We are used to this kind of environment because we have been traveling from the south, sleeping on the streets and sleeping in fields. I feel fine being in the shelter. As long as I am in there, even on the grass, I'm fine. There are no problems.
And members of the caravan have started looking for work. Our correspondent in Tijuana, Pablo Perez, tells us why.
Migrants have started to fill out job applications. They're talking about their previous jobs and what they can do, as they face a long wait for their asylum requests in the US to be approved. They're trying to make the most out of a bad situation, so they are looking for work in the meantime.
I'd rather leave the shelter and find work. I have always worked. I am not a thief or anything like that.
In addition to earning an income and lifting their self-esteem, finding work allows migrants the opportunity to break stereotypes and prove to their host country that they are good, hard-working people.
We want to show everyone that we want to work, that we are good workers.
There are work opportunities for them in Tijuana, a city of nearly 3 million people.
This is a city of immigrants first of all. Our parents, our grandparents, everyone came here looking for a better life. We cannot close the door to anyone. Therefore, available jobs should be given equally to Mexicans and migrants.
Some of the nearly 3,000 migrants living in the shelter at the Benito Juarez Sports Complex have found a job. They're grateful for every day they get to return to their families.
It's such a relief to have work. I'm no longer hopeful somebody will give me food. I am earning my own food.
Tijuana is not only known for being a major border city, but also for the work opportunities that can be found here. In this multicultural city, migrants who are part of the caravan are slowly integrating into everyday life.
And hundreds of people traveling with the migrant caravan have visited the Guadalupe Basilica in Mexico City. Devotees held portraits of the Virgin Mary as they walked to the Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. There, they attended Mass, with many asking the Virgin to grant them their wish of arriving safely to the United States. Meanwhile, the governor of the Mexican state of Baja California has asked the central government to control the flow of people arriving there.
The first caravan has 5,600 people. We have 3,930 migrants in Tijuana, 94 in Tecate and 960 in transit to Tijuana. The caravan 2 and 3 have 2,600 who are here in Baja California. These are the estimated numbers. It's also estimated that 840 people are coming, and there is also a caravan that already passed by Tapacula with 250 Honduran people.
And on the other side of the border, soldiers deployed in Texas are waiting for the migrants. U.S. President Donald Trump has sent just under 6,000 troops to the Mexico border with the task of supporting border patrol. However, some residents think that the entire operation is nonsense.
The army being deployed here is ridiculous. It's absolutely stupid because if they want to come in, they're going to come in anyway. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Our border is very fluid. It has been that way for centuries. It will continue to be that way. I think what gets people attention is the large numbers, like the caravan, and that makes people anxious, excited, and afraid, and they don't know how to respond to that.
To other news now, hundreds of students have rallied in Venezuela's capital, Caracas, to support the government of Nicolas Maduro on Student Day. President Maduro attended the demonstration and led students in a pledge to defend socialism. He asked students to support the revolution and the country's sovereignty and peace.
I want the student movement out in the streets, defending the revolution, defending peace, defending the country against imperialism. I'm asking for the support of the Venezuelan student movement to move ahead with the Homeland 2025 plan in order to govern in peace.
But another group of students clashed with the police during a demonstration against the president on that same day. Protesters marched from the Central University in Caracas, urging Maduro to resign. Peruvian judicial workers have gone on a 48-hour strike to demand higher pay and an increase in their budgets.
Administrative and technical workers at the courts will be striking for 2 days to protest. Among them are lawyers with postgraduate degrees who only receive a salary of $360, with no increase in the last 10 years.
This doesn't cover our basic needs, and that affects our work. Constitutional law states that the judicial sector workers in Peru are exclusive.
They're not only asking for higher pay, but an increase in the justice system's budget so they can improve the conditions they work in to provide a better service.
The government must increase this budget so we can organize better and hire more staff. Sadly, there are delays, and this happens because we have too many cases. Sometimes we have to work weekends or extra hours to do what we must.
In the morning, workers marched towards the Palace of Justice to urge the president's support. They were joined by litigation lawyers.
The budget is not enough. We have too much work and our workers can't handle it. As lawyers, we're sorry for this and we think that they can't do more than what they're already doing.
Workers have also called on the government to take action against reported corruption in the judicial sector, involving not only suspended or charged judges, but those who are still working.
And controversy continues in Peru over former President Alan Garcia's asylum request to Uruguay. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, explains.
It's been 5 days since former President Alan Garcia took up residence in the Uruguayan ambassador's home in Lima. Garcia is waiting for a response from the Uruguayan government about his asylum claim. He's trying to avoid serving jail time for the corruption charges in the Odebrecht scandal. He reportedly received bribes from the Brazilian company to secure the contract to build Lima's subway system. Protests have been going since these accusations were made public, and more are planned for Wednesday. Over 100 trade unions and social organizations plan to gather outside the Uruguayan ambassador's home to demand that Garcia's asylum be rejected. They also want to ask the former president to keep his promise of facing justice.
We thank Jaime for that report. The hearing for Panama's former president, Ricardo Martinelli, is set to resume on Thursday after it was suspended due to his ill health. The former president is accused of spying during his tenure, and his sons have been arrested in the U.S. U.S. authorities confirmed that they were accused of bribery in connection with the Odebrecht case. And forensic anthropologists in Guatemala are exhuming the remains of the more than 200 victims of the genocide of the 80s. The army had buried them under a school in the community of Trinitaria Ixcan.
They are looking for the remains of the first inhabitants of this community. They were wiped out by the army in February 1982.
The remains were left in this area, according to what the witnesses told us. Many of them put in a ditch, and later the ditch was buried under the school.
The few witnesses who survived say that after the massacre, the army threw grenades on them to try to burn the bodies. When that didn't work, they decided to build a primary school on top of the grave to hide evidence.
In this case, they did everything possible to hide the evidence, to the point of leaving no one alive and no record of what was done. And then they built the school over the top. But in spite of all that, the evidence is here.
It's a delicate task for the forensic anthropologists. They have to remove the earth millimeter by millimeter to recover the fragments of bone.
We are only able to recover small fragments. We haven't found a single complete bone. They were burned, and later they built the school. We are told they drove heavy machinery over the grave.
It's complex, painstaking work, but some families from nearby communities have gone to the exhumation, hoping to find their relatives who were kidnapped by the army.
At last, we have the satisfaction of seeing some remains. We don't know if they belong to my dad or not, but at least it's something. And many families are in the same situation. They just don't know.
The forensic experts have until December to complete their work. They must finish before the new school year begins.
We'll take a short break now. More news after this.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Brazil's president-elect Jair Bolsonaro has appointed the Secretary General of the presidency. Bolsonaro's close ally and the former head of the conservative Social Liberal Party, Gustavo Bebiano, will hold the position. Bebiano says he will focus on modernizing the state, reducing bureaucracy, and improving technology within the government. And trade unions in Brazil are protesting over the pension reforms proposed by the president-elect. Union leaders say that Bolsonaro's proposals will lead millions of workers to misery. They also say the planned reforms are worse than those of the outgoing president, Michel Temer. And still in Brazil, outgoing President Michel Temer has signed a free trade agreement with his Chilean counterpart. The agreement will eliminate roaming between the two nations, among other things.
It eliminates roaming, which will allow the 500,000 Brazilian tourists who visit Chile every year and the 300,000 Chilean tourists who go to Brazil every year to better communicate.
I also believe that this agreement is the fruit of a natural convergence between our two governments, and therefore between Brazil and Chile.
The greatest dangers to Brazil's indigenous communities come from agribusiness, mining and logging companies. On top of that, 90% of the doctors in their territories are set to return to Cuba following attacks by President-elect Jair Bolsonaro.
Continued attempts at appropriating indigenous land by foreign interests is the main reason for the increase in human rights violations against indigenous people in Brazil.
Ours is a continuous fight for Guarani lands. Women and children are dying. We need to respect our roots and find a way to stop such aggression.
The greatest dangers for indigenous communities come from agribusinesses, logging and mining companies. If President-elect Jair Bolsonaro keeps his campaign promises, indigenous indigenous land will see even greater reduction in size.
This incoming government threatened much more oppression for our people. They say they will take away our lands. This put us on high alert. We must protect our rights. We don't know what price we'll have to pay, but we are resisting.
Now, these communities face yet another problem. 90% of doctors who treated them are returning to Cuba after the president-elect made insulting comments about them.
Our people were suffering before the Cuban doctors arrived. After they came, everything improved. But now we are back to where we were. We need the help they provide. When they leave, who is going to help the Guarani people?
According to the latest census, almost 1 million people make up Brazil's many indigenous communities. In 2017, over 100 of them suffered violent deaths.
5 families have been evicted from their homes in the Chilean region of Ñuble, where a hydroelectric plant will be built. The affected families say the eviction is illegal, as there was an agreement to first find them alternative housing. At least 2 people were arrested during the eviction. Residents are also condemning what they say is ongoing harassment by the authorities. And communities in rural areas of El Salvador are using technology to reduce environmental damage and make better use of their resources. So let's find out more in this report.
Transforming a normal rural home into one that's ecologically friendly is a challenge for 16 communities in Tacuba.
An ecologically friendly home is not just about the infrastructure or any noticeable change. It involves empowering families so they can improve their lifestyle.
Using readily available natural resources, people assess their needs and then as a community find ways to fulfill them.
We have built walls using natural resources, and then we created paint by using bread flour and salt, plus other ingredients.
Among these eco-friendly techniques are rainwater, solar power, using bottles as lamps, energy-saving kitchens, and a reduction in fossil fuels.
I used a lot of natural gas because of my kitchen. I would buy 2 tanks a month, but now 1 tank lasts me through the month. I use a firewood kitchen which doesn't smoke at all.
The efficient use of natural resources has benefited nearly 600 members of the community.
The Latin American and Caribbean Forum on Critical Thinking in Argentina has entered its 4th day. This event is taking place a little under a week before the G20 meeting in that country. It has been billed as one of the most important gatherings of progressive social scientists, politicians and activists, all with the view to discuss the fight for equality, social justice and democracy. World leaders have taken part in the forum. So far, we've heard from the former presidents of Brazil and Argentina, Dilma Rousseff and Cristina Fernandez, as well as the vice president of Bolivia. And Brazil's former president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, sent a letter to the forum where he encourages participants to think critically. Lula also asked those present to build a better world. He also warned about the lies, fake news and political persecution that is engulfing the region. Also at the regional meeting was the Secretary General of Argentina's Confederation of Education Workers, Sonia Alesso. She spoke about access to education being a human right.
We defend education as a social right against this unfairness that we are living of privatization. There is a breakthrough in growing Latin America and in the world of the mercantilization of education. This means specifically for the parents and for our audience. It means big markets in education as a big millionaire business in the world, and thinking about education business and not education as a fundamental human right and as a social good that belongs to all the citizens of the world.
Turning to other developments now, 4 people have been killed in the municipality of San Juan de Uraba in the Colombian department of Antioquia. The murders took place in a farm. The victims were attacked with a knife. The authorities have opened an investigation pointed to criminal groups in the area. Drug trafficking cartels are currently fighting for control of the territory. And at least 6 people have been killed in Haiti when a government vehicle went out of control and ran into a group of protesters. Other protesters later set the vehicle on fire. The incident occurred on the 4th consecutive day of a general strike. Demonstrators want the president, Jovenel Moise, to resign for not investigating corruption allegations. We'll take a short break now. World News is next.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The U.S. government has announced new sanctions against Russia and Iran. The measures target Iranian oil exports to Syria. This as the U.S. has alleged that a Syrian citizen used his Russian-based company to ship Iranian oil to Syria with the aid of a Russian state-owned company. In response, Russia's government says it's clear that the United States does not want peace in Syria. And Iran has also condemned the new sanctions. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has insisted that these threats are simply an excuse to try and blackmail the Iranian government. Around 85,000 Yemeni children could have died from malnutrition since the beginning of the civil war in 2015. The statistics have been released by the NGO Save the Children. At least 14 million Yemeni citizens are at risk of dying of hunger. 2 million of them are children.
When I make breakfast, I pray that we can have lunch. And when I get lunch, I wonder what we have for dinner. I wonder what to prepare or cook. And when you go to sleep, you start to think, my God, what am I going to feed them tomorrow?
The bodies of 6 slain Malawi soldiers who were killed during peacekeeping operations in the Democratic Republic of Congo arrived home on Wednesday. These soldiers were part of a joint operation against armed groups in the forests of the eastern DR Congo. The deaths mark the biggest loss by the UN peace force in the country since the rebels killed 15 troops nearly a year ago. The president is expected to attend the military funeral scheduled for this Thursday.
The UN Secretary General has encouraged the Congolese authorities to continue taking the necessary measures to bring to justice the perpetrators of this attack.
We are very, very sad with the loss of Obre, and the gap that is left will be very difficult to fill in our family.
Former members of Ethiopia's Ogaden National Liberation Front have returned to the country from their base in neighboring Eritrea. The group spokesperson says they are returning to Ethiopia following the signing of a peace deal with the federal government. After last September's peace talks, the Ethiopian parliament declared a ceasefire and removed the group from the list of terrorist organizations. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has warned that his government could veto the Brexit agreement over the Gibraltar dispute. Madrid wants to negotiate directly with London on the future of the contested British territory. So Sanchez is now demanding clarification on the status of Gibraltar in the Brexit draft. Spain maintains its claim to the small colony located in the south of the country, which was ceded to Britain. UK Prime Minister Theresa May is due to sign a treaty with EU leaders to leave the bloc on Sunday.
We have asked the European Commission, we have asked the community institutions, we have also asked the United Kingdom to be aware that this is an essential point for a pro-European government, such as the government of Spain. And if that is not resolved between now and Sunday, Spain, unfortunately, a pro-European government, will have to vote no and exercise its power of veto, because this is an issue that affects the sense of our country.
The silk industry has insulated the Greek city of Soufli from the effects of the country's debt crisis. The remote silk city near the Turkish border has been a key center of silk production since the 19th century. Now, producers say demand is on the rise from designers for the luxurious fabric. The cities mainly export silk clothing and handicraft to Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Cyprus, but it also fills design orders from British stylists. And in a groundbreaking report, France has been urged to amend its heritage law and return looted art to Africa. Thousands of priceless artifacts stolen from the African continent in the colonial era are currently on display at French museums. Now, in the much-anticipated report, experts are advising French President Emmanuel Macron to permanently return the art to the African continent. This could have far-reaching implications for other international museums. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusyourenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you for watching.